Happy Lag BaOmer. I say happy, even though we are all deeply shaken by the unspeakable tragedy that took place Lag BaOmer night, last night in Meron, at the very burial place of the Rashbi, where hundreds of thousands of Jews gathered to celebrate. Terrible tragedy. No words. And yet we say happy Lag BaOmer, because Rashbi himself, Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, specifically requested, that the day of his Hilula, the day of his passing, should be marked with celebration, with simcha. In some places it says simcha gedela, great simcha. To the extent that around 500 years ago, when the Arizal and his student, Rab Avram Halevi, they went to Meron, they would make a pilgrimage to Meron every Lag BaOmer. Rab Avram Halevi, a student of the Arizal, had a custom to say Nachem. It's a prayer that remembers and let us be consoled over the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, the destruction of the temple. The Rashbi came to the Arizal and said to him that was inappropriate for him to do that. And he was punished. To that extent was the importance of simcha, that Rabbi Avram Halevi, even though all year round he said Nachem, and for good reason, he's remembering the destruction, not on Lag BaOmer. So how do you explain that? How can we be besimcha on a day like this, when we see Golus in general, but specifically such a blatant tragedy? Children, teenagers, elders, scholars, they came to Meron for only one reason, to celebrate Lag BaOmer, and this is what happens. And we should not be besimcha, in joy, great joy. My dear friends, the answer is because simcha is not because we are happy and we are frivolous, God forbid. It's because we're told to be besimcha. Simcha is a Avedus Hashem. It's a way to serve God. And it's a way to heal from challenges. Yes, there are people who are besimcha either because they're happy, because they're ignoring, they're in denial. No, this is not coming from denial. This is coming from profound connection. You sometimes cry besimcha too. So this in no way is minimizing the pain, the grief. It's actually honoring those that were taken from us. Because you see, we never have an answer for why God does certain things. And it's important to know that the ultimate answer to any tragedy is silence, is humble silence. Recognizing it's beyond us. But that doesn't mean that we get paralyzed and demoralized. We don't ask why, we ask what are we going to do about it. Rashbi is saying to us on this very day that despite my passing, despite other tragedies that will happen, always remember, take the grief, don't ignore it, sit shiva, mourn, but then channel it into building something. Don't allow the question why to freeze and paralyze you. What are you going to do about it? So of course, the first thing is we need to acknowledge and recognizing the pain in our hearts, recognize the pain of the families, the pain of those that are struggling for their lives right now. Absolutely. But if you're asking yourself, what comes next? The next thing is the energy of grief, which is very powerful energy, needs to be directed toward growth. Let's talk about Rashbi on this Lag BaOmer. He was a man that brought healing to the world. The Gemara, the Talmud tells us that when he came out of the cave, him and his son Rabbi Lazar, after 13 years of having to hide from the Romans who were searching him to kill him for studying Torah, says they came back to civilization. Rabbi Lazar looked and he saw the pettiness. He saw the people being involved in materialism, in things that were superficial. And in many ways, his holy eyes, it says, caused things to burn. Not necessarily literally. He couldn't tolerate it. The spirituality that he experienced was so intense that he couldn't tolerate this surface level life. It says, whatever Rabbi Lazar caused to burn or caused some illness, Rashbi healed. Not because he was less spiritual. On the contrary, he was even more so. He brought healing to the world. We're taught on the verse in Pasha Azinu, in the book of Deuteronomy, Machatzti v'ani erpa. Machatzti means I've caused illness. The Medrash says it means I've caused separation. I've caused separation that in heaven everything lives on forever and on earth things die, death. But v'ani erpa. But I also will bring healing, especially after Mashiach comes. But Chassidic teachings tell us that Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, because he brought and bridged the hefsek, the mechitza, the separation between the inner and the outer, between the soul and the body, he brought healing to the world. And on this very day, a man who brought healing, a man who we say, Rashbi, Kedayalov, Rashbi, Sheyismach Allah b'shas adchak. It's worthy, Rashbi, to rely on him in times of pressure, in times of tension, in times of anxiety and death. B'shas adchak goes on many different things. And a man who says, Yichelni lifter kol ha'elu kulei min adin. A man who says, Rashbi, I can redeem and free the people from din, from judgment, from all harsh difficulties. And yet on that very day, look what happens. So the questions are beyond us, unfathomable, impossible to. So we're silent about that. But we take all that energy, and as Rashbi said, be besimcha, not because you want to be in joy, because I am asking you, I'm commanding you. Ivdu es Hashem besimcha, the commandment to do everything joyous is even when you're doing something even when you're experiencing something that may not be positive. How is that possible? Because it's not about us. We're not joyous because we're in the mood of being joyous, or we're not in the mood, we're not. We're about connecting to something greater that gives us the power to forge ahead. What was the secret of Jewish survival? That everything went smoothly? No, never. Not when we left Egypt, not when the first temple was destroyed, not when the second temple was destroyed, not through the Crusaders and the pogroms and the inquisitions, and then ultimately the Holocaust. The power came because we were able to connect to something that's greater than tragedy and joy, a source that gave us strength to navigate. So yes, we're all called upon on this day of Lag BaOmer, like never before. An Yom Smicha Shel Rashbi, while we cry and while we grieve, we need to know that our strength comes from a deeper place. And yes, we cry out, Ad Mosai, and Rachmana Litzlan, bring already Mashiach, how much more do we need? But at the same time, we need to forge ahead. We cannot become trapped in the name and in the spirit and the memory of these Kodeshim, of these holy people. We need to increase in Torah, in Aveda and Gmilas Chasadim, in studying, in praying, emoting, and in actions. Cognitive, emotional, and behavioral change and growth. And especially in Pnimis HaTorah, which is Rashbi's. Rashbi, of course, was a master of both dimensions of the Torah, the inner and the outer, the body and the soul. But he revealed the Pnimius, the soul, including the Pnimius of every experience in life, even negative experiences, meant to bring us to greater heights. These words don't come easily. I'm not just saying it, but it's the way we've been taught. We tie ourselves, we bind ourselves to things that are beyond us, and we go forward. And sometimes with tears and with sobbing, when we see the names, when we see the people, whose heart can't be torn apart by this. But at the same time, we take that and we say, what am I going to do for these individuals who are not zeicher right now to continue as neshamas begufim, souls and bodies, their mission and their journey. Torah in general brings healing, especially primis HaTorah. Machatzti v'ani erpa. Yes, I've created a separation, and in this world and down below, there's a mechitza where we don't experience eternal life right now. We have illness. We're coming now from a pandemic, and now this. But we're told from the same place where the split comes, the schism, which is really the source of all illness and death, also comes the healing. And when the healing is complete, not only does it compensate, it makes things even stronger. So on this day of Lag BaOmer, let us celebrate like we've never celebrated before. In the year 1980, Tov Shemem, Lag BaOmer, it's eerie and uncanny, but there was a tragedy, a terrorist attack in Hebron that day or day before. Now everyone had Lag BaOmer celebrations coming, parades, taking children to the parks, music, festivals. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe was asked what to do. We're coming after such a tragedy. And he wrote one line. He quoted halacha, that when a kala is being escorted to her canopy, to her chuppah, to her marriage, you don't stop it, even if there's a levaya coming through. Even if someone's died. In other words, the simcha of the kala, of the marriage, not in any way, God forbid, compromises the death, but it's more powerful. So let's analyze that for a moment. What does it mean? That when you have a simcha, so we don't see the tragedy? No, it means your simcha is the way you deal with the tragedy. The Torah would never tell you to be oblivious of tragedy. It's saying the simcha of a woman going to her marriage canopy, going to her chasana, is the best way to also honor someone who's just passed. While we also sit shiva, it's not a contradiction. So therefore the celebration should go on, the simcha should go on. Not because we're ignoring it, not because we don't know it happened, but precisely because we know it happened. That means that we can at times redeem and heal, even from tragedy, through joy. Is it difficult? Of course it's difficult, but that's what's asked of us. And we see how the Jews have grown after the Holocaust, how they rebuilt, with tears in their eyes, with torn hearts, lost families, but the rebuilding must go on. Because that's the way we honor them. We honor them not just by crying for them, but saying we are going to do whatever we can to continue the work you would have done had you been here. What would these 45 or whatever the number neshamas be doing right now? More mitzvahs, more Torah, more gemilas chasadim, more davening, more tehillim. That's what we need to be doing. And in the pasuk that Rashbi is famous for quoting, look how beautiful, look how sweet when brothers sit together. Let this be a wake-up call to once and for all eliminate any form of divisiveness, any form of machatzti, where we create mechitzas, divisions, separations, and sit together. We're brothers and sisters. We're family. We have different approaches, but we're one. And Achdus brings all the greatest blessings. So, bottom line, what's our response to tragedy? Even more unity, even more love, even more connection, and even more joy. Joy, a divine joy. May these words stand in merit. Le'ilei nishmas, It's even hard to say those words. Of every one of the individuals that were taken from us on this Lag BaOmer Tafshin Pei Aleph. May it be a nechama and consolation to their families. And may all those that need a refuah shlema on this day of healing, Rashbi, the schus of Rashbi, may they have a complete refuah shlema v'kreva, speedy, complete recovery. And here on, from this Lag BaOmer on, may we only celebrate simchas and march into the Geula Hamitis V'Ashlema. May the merit of Rashbi protect us all and bring us to that joyous occasion where we will be reunited, and that mechitza between heaven and earth, between eternity and mortality, will ultimately be removed, and we can experience Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi with Chaim Nitzchim and reuniting with all our loved ones. May it be B'Korav Mamash on this very Lag BaOmer.